those of you who are buying the books, looking at the books, or even watching this and sharing with us, those who are members on YouTube or Facebook. I very much appreciate it. God bless you. World Music, World Percussion, I want to give you a shout out. Thank you so much for your support. It really helps. It helps me to keep doing this. So I ask that you take a look. I ask that you will look at memberships, and you'll take a look at some of the things that I'm offering and help to support this keep coming. And before I jump into talking a little bit about the Battle of Kadesh today and Ramses II, I want to talk a little bit about just memberships really quick. So I want to thank you for those of you who are joining in memberships here on YouTube. I very much appreciate it. I want to let you know that you have access to these resources. So if you are a member, a paid member here on YouTube, it's just $4.99 a month. I thank you for your support. It's not just the videos that I'm giving. I'm also giving resources, well-researched resources that you can read. And so there's access to this on my website, on my page, blackeducation.org, and it is a password protected page. So if you are a member, you just go to the community tab. I've posted what the password is there, and I'll update and change from time to time. But these resources and the resources that we'll talk about tonight with respect to Ramses II are already on the page. So you can download it if you're a member. Like I said, here on YouTube, it's only $4.99 a month. God bless you, and thank you so much for supporting me. You can download it, you can read it. And like it's more than just about the videos, and it's more than just about just talking. I think that we have to support what we're doing with research as well as with reading to really be able to pass on information to our children. There's a reason why we wrote things down. There's a reason why ancient Kemetic people wrote so many things down, and being able to write in the words of God, so to speak, in order to be able to tell people things. So I want to thank you for those of you who are members and support me. I very much appreciate it. And I want to be able to give back and share with you these resources, which you can download from my website, and I have the information on the community tab for members. So thank you so much. So God bless you. So let's jump into this. Let's talk a little bit about Ramses II and the Battle of Kadesh. Because when I first found out about this was a battle that I thought, wow, why didn't I know more about this in school? There's so many famous battles that we learn about when you're in school. You're just forced to learn about, right? And as I mentioned, this resource will be available for members on YouTube. It'll be available for you to download. But we talk about so many different battles, about so many different significant things in school that we're forced to learn about, really. If things that, you might even be somebody who's really into military things and war like that, but you're really forced to learn about it. And we're not just learning about military battles that take place within our own, home country. We learn about international battles, right? We may learn about Greek battles or Roman battles, and we're kind of forced to learn that. But we never learn about the Battle of Kadesh, and the Battle of Megiddo, which I talked about the other day, not too long ago, a short time ago, the Battle of Kadesh and what happened to it. So let's talk about it. And it obviously involves Ramses II. It involves Ramses II, and you can see these are images of him, huge, colossal images of him, Abu Simbel. He was known for many things. So he was the third king. He was a king during the 19th dynasty, and he was the son of Seti. And he was a king from around, let's say around 1279 BC to about 1213 BC. So he reigned for a long period of time, more than 60 years. So he got to experience two 30-year celebrations. If you his first 30 years and his second 30 years, he got to be able to celebrate it. And not every king in ancient Kemet got to do that. That was a pretty long time to be able to reign more than 60 years on the throne in ancient Kemet. And he was someone who was an avid builder. So when they build in ancient Kemet, as you know, they're building for God. They're building for Amen. They're building for Batad. They're building for expressions of God, and they're building for God. And he was an avid builder. He was somebody, if you want to put him in a timeline. So I said like 1279 BC is when he began to reign until 1213 BC. So that would put him about 200 years after Hatshepsut. So if you think about Hatshepsut being around, she passed away around 1458 BC. And so right around 1258 BC, he would have been in the middle. He would have still been ruling in ancient Kemet. So he would have been about 200 years after Hatshepsut, just so you can put a mindset in it. And about 300 years or so after the new kingdom started, after the start of the 18th dynasty. And he would have been in the 19th dynasty. And he, as I mentioned, was the son of Seti and the grandson of Ramses I, who was the founder of the 19th dynasty. And there's a whole little discussion. We can talk about that in terms of how his grandfathers founded the 19th dynasty and a new family, if you will, that was in control in ancient Kemet. But Ramses II, as you see his depictions of him here, he was somebody who was bold, right? And there's a lot of things you can say to him. And a lot of people have, I guess, hate for Ramses II. I don't completely know why. I mean, I guess some people have perceptions of him and things about him. It seems that there's just a lot of hate. Now, there is the idea, and some people believe that he was the pharaoh that was perhaps around during the Exodus with respect to the Bible, and that was the pharaoh. There's no evidence that that's true, but some people believe that. Maybe that's why they spread hate on him. But if he was in any other country, I believe, in antiquity, if he was in any other time frame and had other things associated with him, he would be remarkable. He would be much more respected, I think, just because of the things he left behind and the things he did. And so, as I mentioned, he ruled for over 60 years. And he's ruling in ancient Kemet, and he's ruling during a time where in the 18th dynasty, if you remember us talking about it, I talked about Ahmose the First, who started the 18th dynasty and started the New Kingdom. And one of the ways Ahmose the First started the New Kingdom was that he had to go in places in Egypt and kick out people that they considered to be foreign rulers that, we call the Hyksos. They called Hyksos, that they were considered foreign rulers. He had to kick them out. So the start of the New Kingdom and the start of the 18th dynasty was something that was in place as Ahmose the First and his family kicked out the people who they considered to be foreign rulers, who they called the Hyksos. So they kicked them out. From the northern part of ancient Egypt. They were living in the southern part of ancient Kemet. They had Upper Kemet basically in their control, and they kicked out the Hyksos from the north. And they went down south into Kush, and they took over Kush, to the third cataract. So they went into Upper Nubia proper in the 18th dynasty. But not only did Ahmose the First kick out the Hyksos, but he also drove them into Palestine. He drove them all the way into Palestine. And this was one of the first times, when the early times, the ancient Kemet was kind of like an empire. They really, for the first, long period of time, almost like, 2,000 years of their history, 1,500 years of their history, they are, more than 1,000 years, they are not very much imperialistic. They certainly are trading with different people. They have fights over economic routes. They build forts in Lower Nubia in order to be able to control trade routes, but they don't try to go all the way down to Kush proper, if you will. They don't try to go to the third cataract, so to speak, and to push even farther to subdue people. You don't find them going into Palestine until the New Kingdom. And that was when they kicked out foreign rulers off their soil. And then they started going into what is we call the Middle East, right? Into Palestine, Lebanon, Israel, Syria. They started going into that area, and they began to kick the people out who were there, who were in Egypt, and kick them out. And then also they began to subjugate people. They began to, either it was for a reason to not let people invade them because they were concerned about maybe having other foreign rulers or people come into Egypt, or they wanted to just extend their control, or they put a buffer zone so they would not have attacks happening on their border. Whatever the reason, they become imperialistic, and you see them stretching forward. And when you think about that, that's happening in the 18th dynasty. And I've had some people kind of comment down below in some of the comments, talk about, people never knew that ancient Egypt really stretched its borders that far. Like when we talk about far, we're talking literally going up into northern part of Syria, right just outside of Turkey, like literally going past just on the other side of the Euphrates. So in the very northern part of Syria. You find them doing that under Thutmose the First and Thutmose the Third, as we talked about in his annals. So that's the 18th dynasty. So by the time they're doing it, they're imperialistic, and they have one of the longest, if you will, continuous in terms of lengthwise countries in the entire world at that time. They're really managing a really long piece of geography when you consider going all the way down into Sudan, all the way up through all of Kemet, following the Nile, and then going all the way out into Syria, past Palestine and Lebanon and into Syria. You find they're managing a pretty long territory, a long country. And so by the time Ramses II comes into power, he's inheriting a kingdom that has already been somewhat imperialistic. It already has people who they've kind of put under their control. And the people that they fight, and the people that they're controlling, they're people that you hear about. They're people that you've heard about in the Bible. They are people that we've talked about. They're famous people. So you have people like the Hittites and the Babylonians, and people called Canaanites, and various types of people who you would hear in other historical documents and other documents. These are the people that the ancient Kemetic people are either fighting or subjugating at this period of time. In the 18th dynasty and the 19th dynasty, many of these places, they're right up there. They're subjugating them, and the people are paying them taxes. They're paying them tribute. They're giving them their cattle. They're giving them their gold. They're giving them people. They're giving them parts of their harvest. They're giving them ships. And even in the 18th dynasty, they're controlling part of Phoenicia, right there on the Mediterranean coast, on the east coast of the Mediterranean. They're right there near Lebanon and Palestine. Ancient Kemet people are controlling a lot of that. So you find that these people are paying taxes to them, that Kemet is in power and they're in control. And by the time Ramses II comes into power, he's inherited this legacy of where they have stretched themselves all the way into Palestine. And there are periods of time that people rebel. I mean, they rebelled in ancient Kush to the south. They rebelled in Lower Nubia. They rebelled in Palestine. They're going to rebel. That's going to happen. And so you had rebellions that took place in ancient Kemet and in this area that they were taking over in what we call the Middle East, Palestine, Syria, and that type of place. And so this Battle of Kadesh is a part of that. What Ramses II is doing is he's about to go and he's about to try to put down a rebellion in Syria, basically in the northern part, the far northwestern part of his territory. And he does this around the 5th year of his reign. So it's about 1274 BC. He's 5 years into his reign, and there is a coalition of people of a Hittite army that's forming right in there, what we call Syria, right up, just maybe 100 miles or so south of where Aleppo is in Syria today. So they're there, and the Hittite army, and it's a whole coalition of people in this area, and they're forming to fight against the Egyptians. They want to fight against the Kemetic people. And as far as Ramses II is concerned, he's not having it. He's not going to be in a situation where his borders are breached, if you will, and things are not as powerful as they were under his predecessors. So he goes to Syria. He marches his army. Some say it was 20,000 strong, or however many it was. It was thousands of people that he traveled with to Syria to fight them. And it's called the Battle of Kadesh. So they fight right around the ancient city of Kadesh. And it's interesting when Ramses he gets to Syria, and he's about 100 so miles, maybe 120 miles outside of where Aleppo is today. His army is there, and there are two spies. There are a couple of spies. He doesn't know they're spies at first. There are a couple of spies that come to him, and they're from the Hittite army, and they're pretending as if they are deserting the army, and they really are not deserting. They're coming to try to trick Ramses. And this is all documented in Abu Simbel and Abydos and various places like that. This is the story that Ramses tells. So they come and they're trying to trick Ramses, these spies from the Hittite army. And while Ramses has this huge army, he's outside of Kadesh, these spies, these kind of tricksters, if you will, from the Hittite army, they come and they say, Lord Ramses, and we respect you, we bow down to you, and those evil people who are the Hittites, we deserted their army. We knew that you would beat them, that you were going to win, so we left and we came to you for you to have mercy on us. So Ramses asked them, where is the Hittite army? Where is the ruler of the army? And where are they situated? And they tell Ramses that they're about 100 or so miles away, 120 miles or so away in what is today Aleppo. They tell them they're far north in what is today Aleppo, but they really weren't. And so they say, so you got a ways to go. They haven't come down quite yet. They're kind of afraid of you, and they're more than 100 miles off. And so Ramses believes that. Ramses then takes his army, part of his army. So he has this army separated into 4 groups. One was called under the name of Amen. One is under the name of Patah. They have various factions and battalions to build groups of his military and his army. He takes one segment of his army and he goes just on the northwest side of Kadesh. He doesn't go all the way to Aleppo. He just camps on a high ground on the northwest side of Kadesh. And he finds out very quickly, as people are still going back and forth, they end up catching his army. Some people in his army end up catching another spy, 2 other spies that they catch, different people. They catch them and they beat them. They basically beat them and beat the truth out of them. And they asked them, where's the army? They asked them the same questions. And these people basically said that the first people were lying, that the Hittite army is not 100 and some miles off. They're on the other side, on the northeast side of Kadesh, hiding, waiting for you to basically ambush you. And so when Ramses got that message, he had left the main part of his army. He went on kind of the vanguard in front and left the main part of his army farther south. So he was cut off. And by the time he found out that the army, the huge Hittite army that might have been like 40,000 people, more than his army, was on the other side of Kadesh and they were about to attack him, it was kind of too late. His soldiers were not going to get to him in time. And so he tells a story. There's a story that's told about it where the Hittite army then, because they have Ramses II's army basically separated. They're separated. The northern part is there and the southern part, most of the army is away from them. They begin to enclose and encircle Ramses northwest of Kadesh and cut him off from the rest of his army. And he's there now with a small segment of his army being attacked by the full force of the Hittite army and their coalition. And as they're attacking him, and they're going forth to attack him, he says in his account of it that the people who were with him, the bowmen and the infantrymen who were with him and the charioteers, they panicked. They got scared and they started to run. That's what he said. They started to run. And he says that, he's sitting there with thousands of enemies in front of him coming to kill him. And it's a very beautiful part. It's a poem that's a part of this telling of the story. There's one that's kind of a record, that's kind of militaristic, kind of telling you the story. And it breaks out into a poem that's a beautiful poem. time. And he said, he stops, he looks up and he says, God, my Father, is it becoming of a father to desert his son? Have I not committed to you all that you would have me to do? Have I not built things? Have I not offered, 1,000 or 10,000 oxen to you? Have I not given many things to you? And is it to be said that those who give to you, those who put their trust in you, will have a very small reward? Hear me, because I'm about to, be killed and fight this major army. I need your help. And he says in this poem, as he's saying this to God, that God responded to him, and that God took his arms and his legs and his limbs were now basically the limbs and the arms of God. And as he rode on his chariot or had to go out there and fight, that he fought and he slew man after man, that he was killing them. Now, he says he killed about 100,000 people, which is not true. He obviously did not kill. It is not likely that he killed 100,000 people. But he says in his account that he was killing people left and right, and that those who fell down never got up. They didn't get up again, and that God was using his arms and the people that with him as he was killing them, as they were coming to attack them and he's surrounded, were saying, this is not a man that we're fighting. This is a superhuman. This is a God-like man. We're not fighting a man here. And so he's saying that he's slicing them up, left and right. And like I said, he says that he kills like 100,000 people or more than 100,000 people. And, he did not kill 100,000 people in a battle, but that's what the story says. And it becomes a very famous story that he takes back to Egypt with him in Kemet when he comes back. And the story goes on to say that he's killing thousands of people, that they're falling, that they're jumping in the water like crocodiles to get away from him. It's a very, very colorful. He's very specific. And that the only person who stayed with him were his horses. His horses stayed, and his armor bearer. And his armor bearer was scared at first and saying, leave. Can we leave? King Ramses said, we're going to get killed. Can we leave? And he goes, where's your faith? You can't please God without faith. Stop being scared and watch God work. And so Ramses goes and he continues to fight him. He slaughters them. He says he slaughters the Hittites by the thousands. And by the time he slaughters them, eventually his army catches up with him. And when his army catches up with him, they see all these dead bodies of the enemies just strewn all over the place where Ramses has killed all these people. And they say, great Ramses, you are our protector. You are our shield in battle. You protected your whole army. You are our protector. And he basically says to them, you who did not fight, those of you who did not fight, you who were afraid in battle, you don't have a right to really raise your head. You don't have a right to be proud or to beg or to brag or to take your victory stories back to your villages and your homes in Kemet. A brave man is brave by what he does. You chose not to fight today. You chose to run. You did not support your king. Shame on you. So he chastises the people who ran and left him there to fight. And then they come back the next day. And the next day they fight again. And apparently Ramses and the Kemetic army killed. And they kill a lot of people until the Hittite army stops. And until the Hittite army brings, eventually, years later it's going to happen. But eventually he says they don't want to fight anymore. And the Kemetic army leaves. And eventually a peace treaty is signed years later. And it's one of the first peace treaties, I think in history, that's written like that we have a record of. It's like a record of an ancient peace treaty that comes long after the battle is over. But it's an idea that they want to stop fighting and they want to kind of have a truce. But this is all a part of and all came about as it relates to the Battle of Kadesh. And it is, as I mentioned, one of the more famous battles in history because it's so old, because it's so documented in various places throughout ancient Egypt, and that they also have, accounts of it. It's a beautiful poem that goes along with it. And it's obviously, there are exaggerations because, we don't believe that Ramses killed 100,000 people by himself, but maybe he was brave. Maybe he did something that was significant. And it's pretty clear that the battle took place. We know the battle took place. And it's pretty clear that both sides were fighting each other and that the Egyptian army, the Kemetic army may have been outnumbered by the Hittite army. And the fight, even though it might have been a bit of a standstill or it might have been where they kind of fought each other, was certainly one that took place and certainly was a historic battle. So the literature that goes along with it, the writing that's there with it, and the historic nature of it and how it's documented in various places throughout Kemet becomes a part of a legend. It becomes a bit of a legend. So we think of some things that we may read about, or we may hear about, maybe an ancient Greek legend, or we hear something about a Greek deity or a god or something, Achilles and fighting in certain ways. We read about these things in other cultures, but we never get to read about it when it comes to ancient Kemet. So I wanted to remember today, please remember the Battle of Kadesh. Please tell somebody about it. And for those of you who are members, thank you so much. You'll be able to download the resources that we just talked about. God bless you. Thank you so much for watching.